That feels good, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
You know what that means? We're almost back to normal. Thank you for joining us. My name is Monique Valenzuela. I'm the Executive Director, CEO of the Youth Marine Foundation.
I'm Tom Rogers, Chairman of the Board, Youth Marine Foundation, skipper of the Sea Scout Curtis vessel Charles N. Curtis.
And just like you, we've had a crazy year, but we have some great updates, and that doesn't mean we don't have momentum. So join us as we talk about state of the waters, what is going on at the Youth Marine Foundation. So Tom, you know, you've been volunteering continuously for 55 plus years, so you've seen it all. Recessions, you know, global economies, kids not coming to the programs, but nothing quite like COVID-19. I mean, when it really hit us last year, how did it affect you as skipper of the Curtis and your Sea Scout programs?
Well, we wound up shutting down all of our programs temporarily. We had two requirements. Number one, we couldn't have youth here, but on the other side, we had to maintain the vessel. So for the period from March forward, we actually brought adults back into the program in small units, small numbers, so that we could actually maintain the vessel, upgrade the vessel while we're working and keeping alive. Youth programs, of course, were all stopped. During the summer, each time we tried to restart, of course, COVID came back and shut us down. So we finally had to terminate all youth programs, with the exception of occasionally we have to get underway to meet Coast Guard requirements to run the boat. We did that 2 or 3 times. It wasn't until February, when there was a kind of a light at the end of the window, that we began to bring youth back in February. These were youth that had been on the program pre-COVID. We did the month of February doing training. In March, we started opening up the program again to other youth. By the end of March and April, we did our annual dry dock and got that completed. And in May, we were operating every Saturday. By June, we now opened up. We're running both on Sunday nights, or pardon me, Monday nights and Saturdays. So we're now back to full schedule, Monday nights and Saturdays. So it's taken the time to get there.
It has, and I remember when COVID first happened, you and I said, boy, we have kids that need to keep going. They definitely have such a need for the programs. And we tried virtual training, remember?
Absolutely.
You and I worked, you took apart the manual. I mean, what I liked is you took advantage of the time that kids couldn't be in the 4 walls, and you wrote how many manuals? A deck manual, a navigation manual.
And an engineering manual.
Yeah,
So we had at least training guides. We knew when it came back, we had to get up to speed quickly. The best way to do that was to have current, up-to-date training manuals that young people could take with them and read and study. So, and that's paid big dividends.
It has. I almost want to put a USB drive in your ear and pull out all that information, because it's true. You know, the historical knowledge, you spend a lot of time getting it on paper. That was the one benefit, right, of shutting the programs down. It allowed you to look at all of that. The one thing that didn't work well, a lot of people have asked me, Mike, couldn't you do virtual programs? So we took your manuals, and even for all of our programs, we tried to do online incentivized weekly newsletters, kind of weekly quizzes, and it kind of started off really good at first. Remember what happened?
Right. And then they got zoomed out.
Then they got zoomed out. That's right. That's right.
And everybody got too much Zoom and too many of that, and too much, and lost interest. But we've always continued to maintain good communications with the crews and with new people coming in, so they knew we were working to get the programs back up in line.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think for us is that people don't realize, you know, the foundation has a small fleet of vessels, sailboats, kayaks, you know, some inflatable lifeboats, and then both of our program partners, Odyssey and Curtis, have 2 large wooden vessels. So even when the programs aren't going under, there's still maintenance, there's still a cost that's associated with that, so that when we could open the doors, bam, you know, we were ready to go.
Absolutely. We had to maintain the vessels. We actually upgraded the vessels along the way. We prepared for that day when it could open again, and we're fully operational at this time.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Looking forward to summer cruising programs.
Okay, but how is long cruise, for example, long cruise? A lot of our supporters don't know that, you know, all year round we're on the water, we're learning navigation, we're learning engineering, and then the summer culmination is a week-long cruise, you know, going from Tacoma all over the waters of Washington State. So how do you do that in a pandemic when there's so many, you have Coast Guard you have to answer to, the health department, everyone, but you spend a lot of time talking with your volunteers, and how's that going to work this year?
Well, none of us could clearly understand the rules we're going to operate under, but we have some guidelines we've established. And yes, we're going to leave July 31st. We leave for the San Juans. We'll return to Anacortes August 7th and change out crews and start with a new cruise. So we'll have 2 one-week cruises in San Juans this year. Been a bit of a challenge. They're busy. We started in April getting our reservations in place. And in fact, in certain places, we were the last boat to get reservations in April. Typically, that doesn't happen until May and June. So we're going to have a busy summer up there in the San Juans.
You're going to have a really busy summer.
Right.
In the meantime, you've really helped me with linking up with our educators. I mean, while we didn't have programs with some of our legacy partners, we do a lot of grow boating programs for the Youth Marine Foundation. We get a lot of the kids on the water. Those legacy partners we have, whether they're parks districts or schools, they also have had to cut back on their funding, their capacity. It doesn't always make sense sometimes for these programs when they had to cut their capacity in half. So I really was, you kind of laughed, but I did a boots on the ground. It was all hands on deck, literally. And meeting with the educators. I mean, I'm really proud that the foundation was still able to have virtual train the trainers. We had 30 public school, high school teachers on a Zoom, and I sent them all packets. Remember we did that?
Right.
We talked about, how can you take your students on a boat trip while you're on Zoom, while you're virtually learning. So really, you helped me try to take those manuals and what you do on the ships and get them to the public school, middle school teachers. As they were all kind of trying to pivot quickly and find out how their curriculum can be turned, we figured, hey, you know what? There's a lot of math and, looking at your how you measure fuel. There's a lot of navigation pieces that we can hit on. And the kids thought it was fun looking at how to get to Susha Island so they could jump off the top of a boat or find a dinosaur bone. But really, they don't know we're priming the pump to get them down here once we open back up again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The infrastructure was built while we were down for pandemics was incredible. And that's coming now to the fruition of getting the schools back down to here, being a participant. We're hands-on training. We're taking the book learning and putting it to practical use and application. So it's a wonderful program. This last Saturday, we had a teenager running man overboard drills, having to take charge and go through all the process of doing that. She did a wonderful job. This is what our young people are learning. They're learning to be able to touch and feel and be leaders and take charge of very responsible entities. None of this is easy work. It all has adult requirements to it, and we're asking our teenagers to operate at adult levels.
And I think that's the biggest thing you can do. So many areas of life, whether it's a coach or a teacher or in a school or a bank setting, there's the adults and there's the teens. And we're really saying, teenagers, you can rise to the level of adults. And our adult volunteers expect those teenagers to rise to that level, and the teenagers do. And they have a lot of pride, almost being peer-to-peer. They can't drive a car on the street, but they're running a motorboat in the waters of, Washington State. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it to Coast Guard standards.
Absolutely. We expect our young people, 13, 14, 15, to operate at adult levels. And they do a very good job of that. Always been very proud of our young people being able to take on those tasks. And that's an expectation we have.
Hey, they have no problem looking at me and saying, I'm sorry, Miss Monique, you can't come on board with those shoes. And I say, yes, sir. Because if they're in charge, I'm going to listen to what they say. When there's an emergency, I'm going to need to listen to them too. So that's exciting. We
had a young man this weekend that joined us, and his comment to us, he'd never washed the windows before.
Are you serious?
His family had a maid. I hate to tell him, you're washing windows with the rest of us.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so you hear that from my grandkids? You're washing windows too.
Cleaning the boat and washing windows. It's your boat. Take pride in it. Let's show the world how good we are.
That's right. So one of the things that we've really had the chance to do is really talk with the middle schools, the public schools. We've kind of spent the time in COVID looking at the programs and the effectiveness.
Right.
And one of the things we've talked about in visiting Seattle Maritime up in Seattle and talking to their new college dean was, where do we focus our efforts when we reopen? And one of the biggest aha moments, which we found out, is it's really that middle school age kid with recruiting. You know, that 6th, 7th grade, that 13, 14-year-old, that's really the sweet spot for really exposing them to our programs. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
A 13, 14-year-old, once they get the love of the sea, they're going to stay with that, whether it be professional or recreational, and it takes them into the future of their lives. So many of them, we see that.
And the programs that we have are, you know, they're 3 and 4 year programs. We're not just here for a week or two.
No.
So when we get kids in our programs, they're with us for a couple of years, and that's really where the growth happens. That's where the character development happens. That's where, you know, overcoming adversity, that's where that happens. And by getting 13 and 14-year-olds in here, it really is, we're with them through those awkward moments. We're with them as they're kind of navigating growing up. And it's a great program for them to do that in.
Absolutely. It is amazing to watch young people grow. A 13, 14-year coming in, 13 to 14-year-old coming in, who's shy, standing back. Give them a year or two. They're now taking charge of crews, and they're running crews and asking young men and women in their crews to facilitate, to do certain tasks, to be effective. Oh yes, they grow up to great adults, and that leads the way into adulthood. They're building their format for young people for the future when they get out of school and get into the adult world.
That's really important.
It's important for their own confidence and building and skill building.
One of the endeavors that you and I have partaken as my board president in this time of COVID while I've been closed is engaging our industry partners. So I'm really proud that we've been able to reach out to some of the larger maritime community partners we have, businesses, and really say, what do you need for your employee base? What are you looking at for your pathways? Because really, in looking at what they need and looking at our youth population, we really want to bridge that gap. You know, 90% of the youth in Pierce County have never been on the water, come from non-boating families, and won't be on the water. When I look at some of the most successful maritime operators that are female, that are diverse, you know, they've said that their love of the water began when they were on their grandpa's knee or in a boat. A lot of our kids don't have that accessibility. So as we look at recruiting and as we look at reaching out for people to fill these maritime jobs, we've really been able to kind of talk with the industry experts and say, what do you need to run a tug? What do you need for someone who's landside at the Port of Tacoma? And really make sure that our kids understand those opportunities are there. But I'm really proud of the site visits now that are coming online for some of the people that have never really thought to look to us for filling their employment pipeline or look to us for recruiting.
A young person in our program gets basic skills. They walk into the maritime industry with fundamental basic skills. That's such a heads up, because a person walking into the marine industry and never been on a boat, there's a lot of steps ahead of them that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And you got to take a young person who's been in the program for 3 to 4 years. They've got the fundamentals. They've got the love of the boat. They understand it rocks and rolls. They understand that sometimes it's kind of rough out there. You know, they can relax, and if the waves are bouncing, they can bounce with them, and they're not going to scare them. They can then get up and go down and know how to handle lines, or know a little bit about the engine room, or know something about navigation. They actually got fundamental skills going into the maritime industry. Taking somebody off the street with no skills is a long process. We've already filled that process. We're already filling the fundamentals that are necessary for industry.
Yep, I think that's really great. One of the things that's been a little bit tough for you and I is, while we were closed through, you know, the spring months, we weren't really sure what our programs were going to look like for the summer. I mean, usually in January, February, you're telling me this is what we're doing for the summer program, this is what we're going to do for the museums, and everybody was just kind of like, we don't know what to do. I mean, we're all in the same boat, because every week there'd be a new phase or a new level, and we wanted to be safe. And as I was, you know, culminating these relationships and having these Zoom meetings, it all hit the fan at once, didn't it? I mean, all of a sudden the schools opened up, and we must have gotten 4 calls like, okay, we're doing field trips. Can we get these middle schools down there? And I said, Yes, and I'd look at you like, okay, I'll ask for forgiveness, not permission. But you've really been instrumental, and Odyssey has been instrumental in pivoting very quickly. Because what I'm seeing from the public schools is now they're realizing that our kids are missing a piece of the socialization, of the in-person learning. And so they now have these summer programs, and I guess our chickens have come to hatch as we've continued to nurture and foster these relationships. I mean, this summer we have 3 middle schools coming down for a whole day. We have another cruise of middle school principals coming down for a day. And I'm really proud that we've kind of kept the boats going, and you've really driven that, because boy, when that faucet opened up, literally, we got a lot of demand now, don't we?
Yeah, it seems like everybody needs their project done yesterday, and they'll bring it to us tomorrow.
Yes.
And getting our skills ramped up to meet those needs has been a challenge, and we continue to not struggle with it. We continue to improve and build on that. And yes, getting these there are a set of new programs we've never done before.
Yeah.
And some of the old programs, such as overnight cruises, still are not available to us. So we're having to ramp up the skills without some of the fun sides of that, of touring the different communities in the Puget Sound. But we'll take care of that towards the end of summer.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yes.
So if I have extra coffee, you know why, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, getting a middle school down here that is just 10 miles up Pacific Avenue, but as I talked to the principals, they said, our kids have never been on the water. We're 10 miles away. Why not get them down here?
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a group effort. We're going to have 50 kids. We're going to tour the facility. We're going to tell them about all the opportunity. And they're finally going to split up, go on Odyssey, go on Curtis, and get on the waters they've only looked at, that they've grown up around. And they're going to finally touch and feel and see.
Right.
And that's why we're here.
We have the most fantastic waters in the world in Puget Sound, with thousands of miles of cruising, many harbors and many cities, and most of our young people will never see that. And especially when we have to go to islands that are not accessible by ferry or only can be there by private or commercial vessel. This is an opportunity for young people to see something they'll share and they'll remember the rest of their lives.
That's right.
It is something that's absolutely fantastic, and certainly, ask young people to participate and enjoy that.
Yep. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. It always is.
So in the middle of all this, I mean, when you look at the new demand we have, you said it, I think a lot of kids are zoomed out. We tried some virtual learning. It's a lot for kids to sit in front of a computer. And there's a big difference when they get to smell the seawater, dodge the seagulls, and do all that stuff. So as we look at in-person programming, hands-on maritime skills are more important now than ever for activity-starved youth.
Yep. Yes.
But the biggest difference that Youth Marine Foundation has is access to boats and access to docks. A lot of people don't realize we have 2 wooden boats that are subchapter T vessels. And wooden boats are very expensive to maintain, and they have a shelf life. And I'd say that 90 years is pretty good for Curtis, and 80-something years for Odyssey is pretty good too. But what does that look like for the future as far as how long will these boats keep going?
The Curtis was built to chase the rum runners in 1931. That was a 10-year boat. They weren't designed to be long-lasting boats. Run them hard, chase the rum runners, be done. The Curtis now celebrating this year 90 years of service to the community.
Wow.
We are starting a process, probably take 1 to 2 years to find a replacement for the Curtis. We just have to do that. It's aging out to the point in time that we need to look forward. We're solid, it's well built, it's well constructed, it's well maintained, but there is a limit to that ability to do that. So we are now focusing on moving forward. And as you pointed out, it is a Coast Guard inspected vessel because we do carry crew on board and we do take schools out. It has to be an inspected vessel. So it's not an easy task. It'll be a national search, which we'll direct and keep our fingers crossed and come up with a great boat. But we've been very fortunate to have 90 years of service out of that boat. It's a beautiful boat and love to have it, but I got 57 years on that boat.
Wow.
It's a long time, so love that old boat, but it's time we look forward.
So a lot of the things that we did during COVID, are very quiet, and I remember every day I came into work and you would have a noodle bauble or a trinket from the basement of your house. So one of the things I can't wait to unveil to the public when we fully open is our living history wall and our little museum of artifacts from Odyssey and from Curtis. For
Absolutely.
example, the original bugle flag.
That's correct. Well, back in October, we had a Friends of the Curtis, Friends of the program start thing. We really needed to have a history wall, and started preparing that. And we have hundreds of thousands of pictures of in the past. People have donated to us, which gave us a lot of foundation. But I think the best thing that happened, and the thing that really was the difference, is I was out on medical leave in December, and somebody had donated to me a file box of records and correspondence that Henry Foss, who was a very active leader in the Sea Scout program in the 1930s and 1940s.
Wow.
And I had that box, and I sat and read that entire history of the 30s and the 40s from Henry Foss.
The Henry Foss.
The Henry Foss.
Teo
the one that
Foss's
lived
son.
right across that waterway.
Wow.
Over there at 400 Dock Street, right?
Yeah.
And with that, it gave us a tremendous foundation to go out to the public to track additional information about that. And from that basis, we've built a history wall, which now shows us at 98 years of history of Sea Scouts in Tacoma. We are the oldest continuous operating entity on the Foss Waterway.
Wow.
And now we've documented that. Now we've put that on the walls. That's something that everybody can come down and take a look at. It's very impressive. And if they run out of pictures, I've got hundreds more for them.
I love every day I'd go to the case and say, what is this? You have the air scoops. I mean, some of the original air scoops. You have the
Absolutely.
original panel, you know, with the instrumentation that you
engine
took off
panel.
of Curtis?
Oh, it
Where'd
came
that
right
come
off
from?
Well, it came off when they replaced the original control panels.
Okay.
Years ago. Those dials and indicators were removed, and I knew they had some value. I didn't realize how much value they had until I took them home and started cleaning them up. And it took months to do that to fully realize these things are treasures.
Wow.
And I had them cleaned up and re-nickeled, and they're just fantastic. But there's so many more. And yes, every so often when you're not looking, I sneak another one in.
I know.
So I'm slowly unloading my den.
Well, I think it's really cool to see. I mean, 1923 to today. So you have a program that had to compete with cable TV, you know, color TV, the 80s, the 90s, the internet, now Instagram. I mean, we still have 30, 40, 50 kids on a Saturday coming down when all these other technologies are accessible to them, the same way kids came down in the 20s.
Yes.
And it's the same programs that they're doing. That has staying power. And to me, that means that not only are we still relevant, we're going to continue to be relevant.
More so.
More
Absolutely
so.
more so.
That's right.
One of the jewels of this whole thing, the Ship 110 is named after Charles N. Curtis, who was the executive director. I found his engagement letter in 1923 when he was hired by Pacific Harbor Council. Actually, it was a different council, but Pacific Harbor Council in 1923.
Wow.
I actually found his engagement letter.
Wow.
Just amazing to me. Just wonderful stuff.
There's a long history, and I think that a lot of the questions I get, especially when people want to support the foundation, is we have been here for almost 100 years.
That's
You know,
correct.
we've been good stewards, and this is a great many years of time, treasure, and talent invested. We're not going anywhere. The programs have deep roots, you know, in the community, in the water, and it's great to see that. I mean, I love when alumni come through, they look on the timeline and they go to either 70 or 80, wherever they were, and boom, they want to look and see who was in their class when they were on the ships. What year did Odyssey come on board? When did Verite get built?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's really amazing to see. But the thing that makes me most proud, Mr. Tom, is when I see the 4 skippers of Curtis. I mean, you have 4 adults over 100 years almost that have given a quarter of their life to these programs.
Yep.
And our adult volunteers, our industry leaders, that you cannot buy. And that dedication is why we're still here and why kids are still on the boats. It's really something to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
come visit us.
Absolutely.
Come visit. What a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Young people, you're welcome to join us. The Curtis program is here on Saturdays from 9 to 4, Monday nights 6:30 to 7. Don't be late on Monday nights because we lock the gates at 6:45 and we're underway and out to sea. The Odyssey is here on Saturdays from 10 to 3. Great boat to be on. They're having they'll be just fine. They need a new mast, and we'll get that new mast. And from that, they'll be out sailing again. It's an icon on the water, biggest sailboat in southern Puget Sound. So both boats are great programs. Come join us.
We have not been lazy. So although the pandemic did shut most of our programs down, we've really had a chance to spend that time refining our message, reaching out in the community, and being of service whenever we can. At the same time, we maintain the docks, the vessel, the boat storage, because we want to be ready when those doors open fully, as they are now, for young people to come back. So thank you so much for your support, and we can't wait to get 200 new youth on the water in the month of July.